The cold is a living thing in this cabin. It seeps through the floorboards, a damp, persistent chill that her thickest socks can't defeat. It creeps in through the window frames, whispering threats along the glass. It settles deep in her bones, a familiar ache that has nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the silence. Alara pulls the worn quilt tighter around her shoulders, the scent of cedar and old wool a faint comfort against the sterile smell of her own solitude. Outside, the storm throws itself against the forest. Rain lashes the roof in frantic, angry rhythms. Wind howls through the pines, a sound like a great beast in mourning. Each gust of wind, each crack of a distant falling branch makes the small cabin feel even smaller, even more fragile. A ship tossed on a black, roaring sea of trees. She stares into the fire, but the flames offer little warmth tonight. They are just frantic, dancing shapes of orange and yellow, consuming the logs with a hunger that feels mocking. Her own hunger died months ago. Now she just eats out of habit toast in the morning, a can of soup for dinner. The mechanics of survival. The reflection in the darkened window pane shows a ghost. A pale face, large eyes swimming in shadow, hair a tangled mess she can't be bothered to brush. A stranger wearing her skin. She doesn't recognize that woman. The woman she remembers used to laugh. She used to plan. She used to believe in the solid, comforting architecture of a future. A husband. A home with more than one room. The ghost of a lullaby she'd sometimes hum under her breath. Then came the other kind of cold. The cold of a doctor's office. All white walls and beige furniture and the smell of antiseptic overlaying a faint, cloying air freshener. The cold of the words dropping into the air like stones into a still pond, unexplained, irreversible, barren. That last word had clung to her, a burr on her soul. It was the word she saw in Marcus's eyes when she told him. Not sadness, not sympathy, just an appraisal, a reevaluation of an asset that had just been proven defective. He hadn't been cruel, not at first. He'd been logical, practical. His voice smooth and reasonable as he explained the legacy, the family name, the simple biological imperative of it all. As if he were discussing a corporate merger that had hit a snag. It's not you, Alara, he'd said, which was the oldest lie in the book. It's the situation. But it was her. It was the quiet, hollow space inside her that could not be filled. A flaw in the design, a broken vessel. The cold of his hand leaving hers for the last time. The cold of the apartment door clicking shut, sealing her in with the silence and the truth of her own inadequacy, so she ran. She ran from the city, from the pitying glances and the well-meaning but useless advice. She ran from the sound of children's laughter in the park, a sound that had become a physical pain. She ran here, to her grandfather's cabin, the only place that had ever felt like a true sanctuary. But the cold had followed her. Or maybe it had been inside her all along. A sudden, violent crack of thunder shakes the very foundation of the cabin. It's not the rolling, distant thunder of a summer storm. This is a sharp, brutal explosion of sound directly overhead. The lights flicker once, twice, then die. Plunging her into absolute darkness, her breath catches in her throat. The fire has dwindled to embers, casting only the faintest blood-red glow on the hearth. The sounds of the storm are louder now, more intimate, without the low hum of the refrigerator or the ticking of a clock to keep them at bay. She fumbles on the mantelpiece, her fingers knocking against a cold candlestick before finding the familiar, waxy shape of a candle and the small, rough box beside it. Her hands tremble as she strikes a match. The tiny flare of light is a miracle. She guides it to the wick, and a small, steady flame pushes back the oppressive dark. She lights another, and then a third, placing them around the small room. The light is soft, wavering, making the shadows dance and deepen. It feels ancient, primal. Another sound cuts through the howl of the wind. It's not thunder, it's a thud. A heavy, sickening impact of flesh and bone against the earth, followed by the sharp crack of splintering wood. It comes from the front of the cabin near the porch. Her heart slams against her ribs. A bear? A moose? Her grandfather's voice echoes in her memory, a low, calm rumble. Never corner a wounded animal, Ilara. Nothing is more dangerous. She should stay inside. Lock the door. Wait until morning. That's the logical thing to do. The safe thing to do. It's what Marcus would have advised, with a patronizing little smile. Don't be foolishly emotional, darling. But then, a new sound drifts through the walls. It's faint, thin, and high-pitched. A sound of pure distress. A whimper. It's the sound of something small and terrified and alone. And it cuts through her fear like a knife. It bypasses logic and goes straight to that hollow place inside her. The memory of her own weeping, alone in that cold apartment. The memory of wanting someone, anyone, to just open the door. To help. No one had. She takes a deep, shuddering breath. The air tastes of rain and ozone and something else. Something metallic and wild. No one gets left behind. She whispers to the flickering candle flame. The words are a vow. A promise to a younger version of herself. Not on my watch. Grabbing the heaviest iron poker from the hearth, its weight cold and awkward in her hand, she moves to the door. Her bare feet are numb against the floorboards. Every instinct screams at her to stop, to bolt the lock and hide under the quilt until the sun comes up. But the whimpering sound comes again, a desperate little plea lost in the roar of the storm. Her hand closes around the old brass doorknob. She turns it. The wind rips the door from her grasp, slamming it open against the interior wall. Rain and leaves immediately swirl into the room, extinguishing one of the candles with a hiss. The world outside is a churning chaos of black and gray. Her eyes strain to adjust. The porch light is dead, but the remaining candles inside cast a weak, golden rectangle onto the wet porch steps. And in that feeble light, she sees it. It's not a bear. It's a wolf. But it's a wolf on a scale she could never have imagined. It is impossibly large, a creature of myth. Its fur is the color of a starless midnight sky, soaked and matted with rain and something darker. Its massive head rests on the splintered remains of her porch railing, which it must have shattered in its fall. A great, shuddering breath racks its body. Its side is a mess of torn flesh and blood, a deep, grievous gash that pulses with every labored heartbeat her own heart seems to stop. This is the apex predator of this forest, the thing of nightmares and warnings. Then she sees the source of the whimpering. Tucked beneath the giant wolf's shoulder, shielded from the worst of the wind, is a cub. It's tiny, a ball of drenched black fur no bigger than a house cat. Its eyes are squeezed shut, and its whole body trembles as it pushes its small nose against the unmoving bulk of the larger animal. A parent and its child. The poker slips from her numb fingers and clatters onto the floor. The great wolf's head lifts a fraction of an inch. One eye, a slit of burning, impossible gold, finds her in the doorway. There is no malice in it, no predatory gleam. Just a depth of intelligence and pain that steals the air from her lungs. It is an appeal, a silent, desperate request from one parent to another. And in that moment, the creature ceases to be a monster. It is a father, a mother, a protector who has failed. It is every fear she has ever had, embodied in fur and fang, lying broken on her doorstep. The internal debate is over before it even begins. Logic has no place here. Fear is a distant hum. All that matters is the look in that golden eye and the sound of that tiny, weeping cub. "Okay," she breathes, the word a plume of white vapor in the cold air. "Okay, I'm coming." She steps out into the rain. The cold is a shock, a physical blow. Rain plasters her thin nightgown to her skin in seconds, chilling her instantly. The wind whips her hair across her face. She ignores it all. Her grandfather's lessons come back to her now, not as warnings, but as a practical guide. He was a veterinarian before he retired to these woods. He'd taught her things: how to move around animals, how to read their posture, how to be calm. "Easy now," she murmurs, her voice low and steady, though her heart is a frantic drum against her ribs. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to see." She approaches slowly, one deliberate step at a time, keeping her hands visible and open. The wolf's golden eye tracks her every move. A low growl rumbles in its chest, a sound like shifting rock deep underground, but it's weak, laced with pain. The cub whimpers again and tries to burrow deeper into its parent's fur. "Shh, little one, it's all right." She stops a few feet away, rain dripping from her nose and chin. She can smell it now, the sharp, coppery scent of blood, heavy and sickening on the wet air. It's bad. Much worse than she thought. The gash on its flank is long and deep, torn open as if by giant metal teeth. A trap. It must have been a trap. Illegal snares set by poachers. She'd heard rumors of them in the village. "You got caught, didn't you?" she whispers. "You poor, brave thing." The wolf gives a soft huff of air, a sound of profound exhaustion. Its head sinks back down to the boards. It's an act of surrender, an act of trust. It's terrifying, and it solidifies her resolve. "I can't treat you out here," she says, thinking aloud. The rain is washing away the blood, but it's also chilling him, sending him into shock. "I need to get you inside, out of the storm." The absurdity of the thought hits her. Inviting this titan, this wild god of the forest, into her tiny, fragile home. It's insane. But the alternative is to stand here and watch him die. To watch this tiny cub become an orphan in the middle of a raging storm. She has been an orphan of a different kind. She knows the cold of that particular loneliness. "Okay," she says again, more firmly this time. "Here's what we're going to do." She backs away slowly, never taking her eyes off him. Inside, she grabs the fallen poker and uses it to drag her grandfather's old canvas tarpaulin from the mudroom. It's heavy, stiff, and smells of dirt and engine oil. Back on the porch, she lays it out as close to him as she dares. "I need you to move," she says, her voice pleading. "Just a little. Can you get onto this for me? Please?" The great wolf watches her. Its golden eye seems to hold an unnerving comprehension. It seems to understand her words. For a long moment, it doesn't move. Then, with a groan that seems torn from the very earth, it begins to shift its weight. The effort is monumental. Muscles tremble and bunch under its wet fur. It drags its wounded body inch by painstaking inch, its back legs seeming almost useless. The cub scrambles out of the way, yelping in confusion, then rushes back to nudge its parent's nose with its own tiny one. Finally, the bulk of its weight is on the tarp. It collapses, panting, its breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. A fresh wave of blood darkens the canvas. Her throat is tight with a mixture of terror and pity. "Good boy," she chokes out. "That's a good boy." Now for the impossible part. She can't lift him. He must weigh more than 3 of her put together. She can only drag. She grabs two corners of the heavy tarp, her bare feet slipping on the wet wood of the porch. She plants her heels, leans back, and pulls with every ounce of strength she possesses. The tarp barely moves. "Come on," she grunts, tears of frustration and desperation mixing with the rain on her face. "Come on." She pulls again, her muscles screaming in protest. The tarp scrapes forward an inch, then another. It's like trying to move a mountain. She establishes a rhythm. Pull, gasp for breath, plant her feet, pull again. The wolf remains limp, a dead weight, trusting her completely. The cub trots alongside, a tiny, anxious shadow. Across the porch, over the threshold, into the relative warmth and light of the cabin. She finally gets him clear of the doorway and collapses against the wall, chest heaving, her body shaking with cold and exertion. She manages to push the door shut, the sound of the storm instantly muffled, reduced to a distant rage. The cabin is a mess. Water and mud and leaves are smeared across the floor. And in the middle of it all, on the dirty canvas, lies a giant, bleeding wolf. His cub immediately curls up against his chest, a tiny living anchor. Alara looks at the scene, the wildness of the forest, bleeding out on her hearthrug. The flickering, uncertain candlelight, the two creatures, one huge and broken, one small and terrified, who have placed their lives in her hands. This is madness. She has crossed a line. She has brought the danger inside, into her sanctuary. She has shattered her own isolation in the most extreme way imaginable. And for the first time in a very long time, the cold inside her recedes, pushed back by a fierce, unfamiliar warmth. Purpose. She gets to her feet. She has work to do. The days that follow fall into a strange, surreal rhythm. They are measured not by the clock, but by the wolf's breathing, by the changing of his dressings, by the small, tentative explorations of the cub. Alara names them in her head because to give something a name is to make it real, to acknowledge its place in her world. The great wolf is Fenrir. It seems to fit his mythic size, his silent, brooding presence. The cub, a tiny, stumbling ball of black fluff and boundless, naive energy, she calls Pip. Her life shrinks to the four walls of the cabin, but inside those walls it has never felt so full. Her first task is to clean the wound. She boils water on the wood stove, her hands shaking as she gathers her meager first aid supplies. Antiseptic wipes from a kit she hasn't opened in years. Clean cloths torn from an old bedsheet. The suture kit her grandfather kept for farm animals. Approaching Fenrir is a new kind of test. He lies still, but his golden eyes are open, tracking her every move. Pip is asleep, curled into a tight ball against his father's neck. "I have to clean this, Fenrir," she whispers, showing him the warm cloth. "It's going to hurt. I'm so sorry, but it's the only way." A low rumble vibrates through the floorboards as she kneels beside him. It's not a growl of aggression. It's a sound of pure misery. She touches the edge of the gash with the cloth. He flinches violently. A full-body tremor and a pained yelp escapes his throat. But he doesn't snap. He doesn't move to defend himself. He just endures it, his gaze locked on her face. She works as quickly and gently as she can, her stomach churning at the sight of the raw, torn muscle and sinew. The metal jaws of the trap did horrific damage. It's a miracle he was able to drag himself this far. As she cleans, she talks, a constant low murmur. "It's all right. Almost done. You're so brave. Just hold still. I know it hurts. I'm sorry." When she finally finishes, her whole body is slick with a mixture of sweat and the steam from the water. She looks at the suture kit. Stitches are necessary. But the thought of pushing a needle through his flesh, she can't do it. Not while he's awake. It would be torture. She cleans it as best she can and makes a thick pad from the cleanest cloths, binding it tightly around his torso. He tolerates her manhandling with a stoicism that shatters her. Feeding them is the next challenge. Her own supplies are limited. She has rice, canned vegetables, some dried meat. She cooks a portion of the meat, shredding it into the smallest possible pieces, and mixes it with some rice and warm water into a sort of gruel. She offers a small bowl to Fenrir. He sniffs it once, then turns his head away. "Please," she begs, "you need your strength." He ignores the bowl but nudges it with his nose toward Pip, who has woken up and is now sniffing the air with interest. Of course he wants his child to eat first. Alara's throat tightens. She pushes the small bowl toward the cub. Pip attacks it with gusto, his tiny face disappearing into the bowl, emerging moments later covered in a slurry of rice and meat. He eats until his belly is visibly round. Then he stumbles over to his father and collapses into a contented, milk-drunk-like sleep. Only then does Fenrir lower his head and eat from the larger bowl she offers, his movements slow and pained. And so the routine is established. Tend the wound, prepare the food, feed Pip first, then Fenrir. Fetch water, keep the fire going, talk. She talks constantly. The silence of the cabin had been a crushing weight for months. Now it is filled with the sound of her own voice. She finds herself telling Fenrir everything, pouring out the poison that has been festering inside her. She sits on the floor a few feet from his tarp, her knees drawn to her chest, and tells him about Marcus. "He said he loved me," she says to the wolf's listening ear. "But what he loved was the idea of me, the idea of a perfect life, a wife, a family, a legacy. When one part of the equation proved faulty, I became a problem to be solved, and the easiest solution was to remove me." Fenrir's golden eyes never leave her face. He seems to absorb her words, his quiet presence a comfort she has never known. He doesn't offer solutions, he doesn't give her platitudes. He just listens. "The worst part?" she confesses one rainy afternoon, her voice thick with unshed tears, "is that a part of me believed him, that I was broken, useless. What good is a woman who can't do the one thing she's supposed to be able to do?" She tells him about her lonely childhood, raised by a grandfather who loved her but was a man of few words. She tells him about her dreams of having a house full of noise and laughter, a dream that now feels like a cruel joke. She is laying her soul bare to a wild animal, and it feels more natural, more right, than any conversation she has ever had with a human being. On the third day, she notices something impossible. When she removes the dressing to clean the wound, she stops, her hand hovering in midair. The gash is still there, angry and red, but it's smaller. The edges, which had been ragged and torn, are now smoother, cleaner. The flesh is knitting itself back together at a rate that defies biology. It's not just healing, it's regenerating. She stares at it, her mind refusing to process what her eyes are seeing. It should be infected. It should be festering. Instead, it looks like a wound that has been healing for weeks, not days. She looks at Fenrir. His gaze is steady, knowing. It's as if he's been waiting for her to notice. This is not a normal wolf. The realization settles not with a bang, but with a quiet, chilling certainty. The impossible size, the unnerving intelligence, the miraculous healing. He is something more. Fear should be her primary response, a primal screaming terror, but it isn't. It's wonder, and a strange deepening sense of connection. He is a secret, a mystery, and he has trusted her with it. The dynamic in the cabin shifts. Her fear, which had been a constant low hum beneath the surface, begins to fade entirely. It is replaced by a profound sense of comfort. His presence, which once felt like a threat, now feels like a shield. The storm could rage outside, the world could fall apart. But inside this small wooden box, with this mythical creature and his child, she feels safe. Safer than she has ever felt in her life. Pip becomes the bridge between them. He is no longer terrified. He is a cub, and the cabin is his new playground. He chases dust motes in the sunbeams. He pounces on Alara's bare toes, his tiny teeth too soft to do more than tickle. He plays a game of hide-and-seek around Fenrir's massive, patient form. One evening, Alara is sitting on the floor, leaning against the worn armchair, reading a book by candlelight. Fenrir is resting, his breathing deep and even. Pip, in a burst of energy, scrambles into her lap, curls into a tight ball, and promptly falls asleep. She freezes. His tiny body is a warm, solid weight against her thighs. His soft puppy breath puffs against her hand. A feeling so sharp and fierce it's like a physical blow rises in her chest. It's a longing so deep, an ache so profound, it almost makes her cry out. She looks over at Fenrir. He is watching her, his golden eyes soft in the flickering light. He sees it all. He sees the hollow place inside her, and he sees the tiny creature that is temporarily filling it. He gives a soft, low whine, a sound of shared sorrow, of understanding. Slowly, cautiously, she reaches out a hand. She has touched him to tend his wound. A clinical, necessary contact. This is different. This is a choice. Her fingers tremble as they brush against the fur of his brow. It is thick and surprisingly soft. He doesn't flinch. Instead, he leans into her touch, just a fraction of an inch, a silent affirmation. She lets her hand rest there, her palm against his head. A current, a strange energy seems to flow between them. It's a warmth that has nothing to do with body heat. It's a connection that transcends species, transcends logic. In this moment, with a sleeping cub in her lap and her hand on the head of a creature of myth, the loneliness that has defined her for so long simply evaporates. She is not alone. The knock on the door comes a week after their arrival. It's a sharp, impatient, authoritative sound. Not the friendly rap of a neighbor. It's a summons. Instantly, the peace of the cabin is shattered. Fenrir, who has been dozing by the fire, is on his feet in a silent, fluid motion that belies his size and his still healing injury. A growl begins deep in his chest, a terrifying, guttural sound that vibrates through the floor. His body is a wall of black fur and tense muscle between Alara and the door. Pip, startled, scurries behind him, peering out with wide, frightened eyes. Alara's blood runs cold. No one comes here. No one even knows she's here. Except, Alara. I know you're in there. Open the door. The voice. Marcus. It's impossible. How could he have found her? She left no trail. She told no one. Alara, don't be childish. I drove all the way up here. The least you can do is talk to me. His voice is tight with irritation, the smooth, reasonable tone he uses when he's not getting his way. Her heart is a trapped bird, beating frantically against her ribs. The past is literally at her door. The man who broke her, who discarded her, is here. He has breached her sanctuary. Go away, Marcus, she calls out, her voice shaking. We need to talk. I've been worried. Everyone's been worried. A lie. He hasn't been worried. His pride has been wounded. She embarrassed him by disappearing. Fenrir's growl deepens. The fur along his spine stands on end. He takes a slow, deliberate step toward the door, a predator stalking its prey. Alara, for God's sake, what is that sound? Do you have a dog in there? Open this door right now. The handle jiggles. He's testing the lock. I said go away, she screams, panic rising in her throat. I'm not leaving until we've talked this through. You've had your little tantrum, your little escape to the wilderness. It's time to come home. Home. He thinks the cold, sterile apartment they shared was her home. He has no idea. There's a sudden, sharp crack as he puts his shoulder to the door. The old wood groans in protest. That's it. He's trying to force his way in. Before Ilara can even think, Fenrir acts. He launches himself at the door, not with his full weight, but with a controlled, terrifying force. The impact is like a small explosion. The door, old and weathered, splinters around the lock and bursts open. Marcus stumbles back, his face a mask of shock and disbelief, as he finds himself face to face with a creature from a nightmare. Fenrir stands in the doorway, his massive form filling the entire frame. His lips are curled back from his teeth, revealing fangs as long as her fingers. The growl is no longer a warning. It is a promise of violence. A death sentence. Marcus is frozen for a heartbeat, his urbane confidence stripped away, leaving only raw, primal fear. He is pale, his mouth hanging open. He looks from the gigantic wolf to Ilara, who is standing behind it, her hand pressed to her mouth. What in God's name is that? He stammers, taking a clumsy step back. Fenrir takes a corresponding step forward onto the porch, forcing Marcus back further. Stay back! Marcus shrieks, his voice high and thin. He fumbles in his coat, his eyes wild with terror. Ilara sees the glint of metal in his hand, a small silver pistol. He must have brought it for protection in the woods. The irony is bitter. Marcus, no! She screams, but he's not listening. He's consumed by his terror. He raises the gun, his hand shaking uncontrollably. Fenrir doesn't hesitate. He lunges, it's a blur of black fur and fury. He moves faster than anything that large should be able to move. He doesn't go for Marcus's throat. He goes for the arm holding the gun. His jaws close around Marcus's wrist. There's a sickening crunch of bone. Marcus screams, a raw, piercing sound of agony. The gun clatters to the porch. Fenrir releases him with a flick of his head, sending Marcus sprawling backward into the mud and rain. He scrambles away, clutching his ruined hand, his face a mess of terror and pain. Monster! You're with a monster! He sobs, crawling backward like a crab before finding his feet and stumbling away into the trees. His screams fading into the woods. Silence descends, broken only by the drip of rain from the eaves and Fenrir's heavy panting. He turns back to her. There's a wildness in his eyes she hasn't seen before, the bloodlust of the fight. But as his gaze meets hers, it softens. He takes a step toward her, then falters. He stumbles, a low whine of pain escaping him. Ilara rushes forward. Fenrir! He collapses onto the porch, his side heaving. The violent lunge has torn his wound open again. Fresh, bright red blood is soaking through the fur on his flank, a stark, vivid stain against the black. He tried to protect her, even when he wasn't fully healed. He sacrificed his own recovery for her safety. At that moment, a new sound cuts through the air, a low, guttural roar from the edge of the tree line. It's not Marcus. It's something else. Something big. A massive grizzly bear, drawn by the scent of blood or the sounds of the confrontation, emerges from the trees. It rises onto its hind legs, its dark eyes fixed on the bleeding, weakened wolf on the porch. It sees an easy meal, a rival to be dispatched. Fenrir tries to rise to meet the new threat. But he is too weak. He can barely lift his head. He lets out a defiant, pain-filled growl, but it's a shadow of his earlier fury. He is helpless. The bear drops to all fours and begins to charge. Time slows down. Ilara sees the bear's powerful muscles bunching. She sees the mud flying from its claws. She sees Fenrir, broken and bleeding, preparing to die for her. And a fire she never knew she possessed ignites in her soul. He saved her. Now she will save him. She doesn't think. She acts. With a scream torn from the deepest part of her being, a sound of pure, protective rage, she runs from the cabin and throws herself in front of Fenrir's body. She stands between the charging bear and the wounded wolf, her arms spread wide. She is a small, fragile human in a soaked nightgown, facing down a literal ton of muscle and fury. It is a suicidal, insane act. It is the most logical thing she has ever done. "No!" she screams at the bear. "You will not touch him!" The bear is only yards away, its massive head low, its hot breath fogging in the cold air. It is a freight train of claws and teeth. It should not stop. It should plow right through her. But it does. It skids to a halt, confusion warring with aggression in its small, dark eyes. It seems baffled by this tiny, screaming creature who shows no fear, only defiance. Behind her, she hears a gasp, a strange, choked sound. And then the world dissolves into light. A blinding, white-hot brilliance erupts from Fenrir's body. It is not the gentle flicker of a candle, but the incandescent fury of a star. It pours out of him, washing over her, through her. It is not hot. It is not cold. It is pure energy, pure life. She feels it saturate every cell in her body, a feeling of absolute peace, of coming home. The sound of the bear's panicked roar and the crash of its retreat into the forest are distant, unimportant sounds. The light is everything. It holds her for an eternity, for a single heartbeat. And then it recedes, collapsing back in on itself. And where the giant wolf lay, there is now a man. He is naked, his body long and leanly muscled, etched with old scars that speak of 100 battles. His hair is a wild, tangled mane of pure black, plastered to his skin by the rain. He lies in the same position Fenrir had, collapsed on the porch, his side still bleeding from the reopened wound. He pushes himself up on one elbow, his movements pained and unsteady. He looks at his own human hand, then at her, and his eyes. They are the same eyes, the same impossible burning gold, filled with an intelligence and an ancient sorrow that she knows better than her own reflection. "You," he rasps, his voice a low, rough sound she has never heard and yet has known forever. "You shielded me." He looks at her, truly looks at her, and in his gaze she sees shock, awe, and a pain so profound it makes her own heart ache in sympathy. Then his eyes roll back in his head, and he collapses, unconscious, onto the wet, bloody wood of her porch. The world comes back into focus with a jarring lurch, the smell of blood and rain, the cold seeping into her bones. The sight of the unconscious, naked man lying where the wolf had been. Pip, the man who had been hiding inside, creeps forward, whimpering. He sniffs at the man's still form, then looks up at Ilara, his small face a mask of confusion and fear. He seems to recognize the scent, the essence, but not the shape. Ilara's mind is a maelstrom of impossibility. Wolves don't turn into men. Magic isn't real. She must be hallucinating. She hit her head. She's dreaming. But the cold of the rain is real. The splinters in the doorway are real. The blood is real. And the man is real. Her training, her logic, her sanity, it all screams at her to run, to get in her car and drive away and never look back. But her heart, that foolish, stubborn, broken thing, tells her to stay. This is still Fenrir, her Fenrir, the silent confidant, the brave protector, the creature who looked at her not as a flawed woman, but as a person worth defending. He is wounded. He is vulnerable. He needs her. No one gets left behind, she whispers, the vow feeling more sacred now than ever. Getting him inside is another Herculean effort. He is lighter than the wolf, but he is still a dead weight of solid muscle. She uses the tarp again, dragging him inch by painstaking inch, out of the rain and into the warmth of the cabin. She manages to heave his torso onto the old sofa, his long legs dangling awkwardly onto the floor. She covers his nakedness with the cedar-scented quilt. Pip immediately jumps onto the sofa and curls up on his chest, a tiny, loyal guardian. Now she can see his wounds clearly. The gash on his side is still there, a brutal tear in his human skin. There are other cuts and bruises, souvenirs from his fight with Marcus and his fall. Her hands are shaking so badly she can barely function, but she moves on autopilot. She boils more water. She gets her grandfather's suture kit. There is no choice this time. He is a man. His wound needs stitches. She cleans the gash as gently as she can. His skin is hot to the touch, feverish. She threads the needle, her stomach rolling. She has never done this on a person before. Taking a deep breath, she pushes the needle through his skin. He groans in his unconsciousness, a low, pained sound. She murmurs to him, the same soothing nonsense she used when he was a wolf. "It's okay, I've got you. Just hold still. I'm almost done. I'm so sorry." She works with a clumsy, desperate focus, pulling the edges of the wound together, creating a ragged, ugly seam of black thread. It's not neat. It's not pretty. But it's closed. She cleans it one last time and bandages it tightly with more torn sheets. Exhaustion hits her like a physical wave. She sinks to the floor, her back against the sofa, her body trembling with adrenaline and shock. She stares at the man sleeping under her quilt, at the cub rising and falling with his feverish breaths. Who is he? What is he? The questions circle in her mind, too large and too frightening to grasp. She lets them go. For now, it's enough that he is alive, that he is safe. She must have fallen asleep there, on the floor, because she wakes to the sensation of being watched. She opens her eyes. The cabin is filled with the soft gray light of dawn. The fire has burned down to embers. The man on the sofa is awake. He is propped up on one elbow, the quilt pooled around his waist. He watches her with those same golden eyes, now clear and lucid, though filled with a deep, weary sadness. "You stayed," he says. His voice is a low baritone, rough with disuse. She just nods, unable to find her own voice. Most would have run. "You were hurt," she finally manages to whisper. A flicker of something, gratitude, wonder, crosses his face. He looks at the sleeping cub on his chest, his large, scarred hand coming up to stroke the tiny back. "This is Pip," he says, a faint smile touching his lips. "My nephew. His parents. They were killed in the same ambush that left me for dead." The pieces begin to click into place, the desperation, the need to protect the cub at all costs. "I am Kalen," he says, his gaze meeting hers again, "and I owe you my life, both our lives." "You were a wolf," she says, the words feeling stupid and inadequate. He nods, his expression somber. "I am a shifter. My people. We have lived in these forests for generations, hidden from the human world. I am their alpha. An alpha king. A leader. Lying broken on her sofa. The idea is staggering. The trap. The bear." She begins, trailing off. "My enemies are not all animals," he says, a dark look crossing his features. "There are men who hunt us, and shifters who would see me dead to claim my position. They ambushed us. I managed to kill them, but not before. Not before they took my sister and her mate." I was trying to get Pip to safety when I collapsed on your land. He pauses, taking a ragged breath. His golden eyes seem to look right through her, into that hollow space she carries. I felt you, he says, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Long before I saw you. I felt your loneliness. It was like a beacon in the woods, a quiet sorrow that echoed my own. It called to me. It's what drew me here. Her breath catches. He felt her? And then you touched me, he continues, his gaze intense. When you put your hand on my head, it was like the sun coming out after a lifetime of winter. Your compassion. It sped my healing in a way that should not have been possible. He struggles to sit up further, his hand reaching out, not to touch her, but as if to bridge the space between them. There is a reason for all of this, Alara. It is not an accident that I fell here. It is not a coincidence that you, a human woman whose heart is so full of a pain I understand, were the one to find me, or that my wolf recognized you instantly. He looks at her, his eyes pleading for her to understand, to believe. In my world we have legends, stories of a bond that transcends choice, that is woven into the fabric of our souls by fate itself. A bond between two halves of a whole. It is a bond that, for an alpha, is the source of his strength, his anchor. He swallows, the sound loud in the quiet room. It is called Anamkara, soul friend, soul mate. He takes a deep, shuddering breath and finally says the words that will splinter her reality forever. You, Ilara, he says, his voice thick with 1,000 years of hope and despair. You are my mate, my Anamkara, the one my soul has been waiting for. The words hang in the air between them. My mate. Ilara's mind shudders. It simply refuses to accept the information. It is too much. Too fast. Too impossible. A fairy tale. A delusion born of trauma and isolation. She scrambles backward, away from him, until her back hits the cold stone of the hearth. No, she whispers, shaking her head. No, that's not possible. Kalen's face falls. The hope that had flickered in his eyes dies, replaced by that familiar, profound pain. He had expected this. Rejection. I know this is a shock, he says, his voice strained. He makes a move to get up, to come to her, but thinks better of it. He stays on the sofa, giving her space. I know it makes no sense to you. You're a man who turns into a wolf, she says, her voice trembling. You're talking about fated bonds and soulmates. I'm just me. A woman hiding in a cabin because her fiancé left her because she can't have children. The confession spills out of her, raw and ugly. She wants to shock him. She wants to push him away, to show him how wrong he is, how broken and unsuitable she is for any kind of fairy tale. I know, he says softly. How could you possibly know that? Because I heard you, he says, his golden eyes filled with an aching sincerity. When I was Fenrir, you told me everything. You poured out your heart to a wolf, and every word settled into my soul. I know your pain, Alara. I know about Marcus. I know about the doctors. I know about the hollowness you feel. Do you think any of that matters to me? It has to, she cries, tears finally breaking free and streaming down her face. I'm defective, barren. I can't give an alpha a legacy. I can't give you an heir. The word hangs in the air, ugly and sharp. It's the truth that has defined her, the flaw that broke her life apart. Kalen's expression hardens, not at her, but at the words themselves. Do you think that is all a mate is for? A vessel for heirs? He says, his voice low and laced with anger. That is the logic of selfish men like Marcus. That is not the way of the bond. The bond is about strength, about balance, about heart. It is not about a womb. He finally swings his legs off the sofa and stands, ignoring the pull of his wound. He is magnificent and terrifying, a naked, wounded king in her tiny cabin. He takes one slow step toward her. Alara, your perceived flaw, the thing that caused you so much pain, is the reason you are so strong. Your heart didn't harden. It broke open. Your compassion, your empathy. When you stood before that bear, willing to die for a creature you barely knew, that is a strength that my people have not seen in 100 lifetimes. That is the strength of an alpha's mate. That is the power of a queen. He stops a few feet from her, his whole body radiating a desperate, pleading energy. I cannot ask this of you, he says, his voice breaking. My world is dangerous. My life is forfeit at any moment. To be my mate is to wear a target on your back. I should leave. I should disappear into the woods and never see you again. It would be the safest thing for you. He is giving her an out. He is trying to protect her from himself. He is doing the one thing Marcus never did, putting her safety and her feelings before his own needs. And in that moment, something inside her shifts. The old Alara, the broken, fearful Alara, would have taken the out. She would have whispered "go" and spent the rest of her life wondering if she had dreamed it all. But she is not the old Alara. She is the woman who faced down a grizzly bear. She is the woman who brought a monster into her home and healed him. She looks at him, at this impossible, beautiful, wounded man who sees not her flaws, but her strength, who heard her deepest shame and called it power, who is offering to walk away, to embrace his own loneliness again, just to keep her safe. He is offering to do to himself what Marcus did to her, to choose solitude over connection, and she will not let him. No, she says, her voice quiet but firm. He flinches as if she'd struck him. I understand. No, she says again, louder this time. She pushes herself to her feet, her legs still shaky. She closes the distance between them until she is standing directly before him. She has to crane her neck to look up into his face. You don't understand. I'm not telling you to go. I'm telling you, no, you don't get to make that choice for me. His eyes widen in shock. You think I'm afraid of your world? She asks, a humorless laugh bubbling in her throat. Kaylin, I've been living in a world that told me I was worthless. I've been hiding from a world that is cold and indifferent and cruel. Your world might be dangerous, but it's honest. You might be a monster to men like Marcus, but to me, you were a refuge. She reaches up, her hand hesitating for a moment before she gently touches his cheek. His skin is hot, his stubble rough beneath her palm. He closes his eyes, leaning into her touch like a starving man offered bread. You listened, she whispers. You stayed. You protected me. And you see me. You actually see me. Not what I can't do, but who I am. At that moment, Pip, who has been watching the exchange from the sofa, lets out a soft yip. He hops down and trots over, nudging his wet nose against Alara's hand, then against Kaylin's leg, as if to connect them. The simple, innocent gesture breaks the last of the tension. Kaylin opens his eyes. A single tear traces a path through the grime on his cheek. I have been alone for so long, he confesses, his voice a raw whisper. The alpha is a lonely creature, Alara, set apart. And without a mate, the loneliness is a constant ache. I felt your ache across the miles. It was a mirror of my own. I never dreamed. I never let myself hope that the one fated for me would be the one who could understand it. I felt safe with you, she confesses in turn, her own tears falling freely now. As a wolf, a giant, wild predator, I was less afraid of you than I was of the man I was supposed to marry. When you were here, the silence wasn't empty anymore. He covers her hand with his own. His is huge, calloused, but his touch is incredibly gentle. With you, my wolf was at peace for the first time in my life. My soul was at peace. He lowers his head, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. His forehead comes to rest against hers. She can feel his breath on her lips, smell the scent of rain and forest and him. Alara. He breathes her name like a prayer. She doesn't pull away. She rises on her toes, closes her eyes, and meets his lips with her own. The kiss is not a fairy tale. It is not soft or sweet. It is a collision. It is desperate and hungry and raw. It is years of loneliness and pain and longing poured into a single frantic point of contact. It is his grief and her sorrow, his strength and her resilience, all melting together. It is the taste of salt from their commingled tears. A jolt, like the white light on the porch, flashes behind her eyes. It's a feeling of rightness, of locking into place. The snapping shut of a circuit that has been open for a lifetime. The hollow place inside her doesn't just fill, it ceases to exist. Transformed into something else entirely, something vibrant and powerful. When they finally break apart, they are both breathless, clinging to each other. The quilt has fallen away. She is pressed against his bare chest, her hands flat against the hard, warm muscle. She can feel his heart hammering against hers. Two frantic, wild rhythms beating as one. He looks down at her, and for the first time, the sorrow is gone from his eyes. It is replaced by a fierce, blazing joy, a devotion that is absolute. Anamkara, he whispers, and this time the words are not a revelation. They are a fact, an anchor, a home. The world outside the cabin, with its storms and its bears and its cruel men, can wait. In here, a new world has just begun, 6 months later. The air here tastes different. It's crisp and clean, tinged with the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and the smoke from 100 hearths. It's the scent of community, the scent of home. Alara stands on a wide wooden balcony, her hands resting on a railing carved with the intricate, flowing shapes of wolves and trees. Below her lies the den, a hidden valley nestled so deep in the mountains that the human world is not even a rumor. It's not a town of houses, but a living village woven into the landscape. Homes are built into the sides of hills, their roofs covered in living grass. Walkways are worn dirt paths. A clear, cold river winds through the center of it all, a silver ribbon tying everything together. And everywhere, there are people. His people. Laughing, working, talking. Children, shrieking with joy, chase each other, their forms sometimes flickering at the edges, a hint of the wolf within. It is more alive than any city she has ever known. A pair of strong arms wrap around her from behind. A familiar chin rests on her shoulder. "You are 1,000 miles away," Kaelin murmurs into her ear, his voice a low, contented rumble. She leans back against his chest, sinking into his warmth and his strength. He is dressed in simple leather trousers and a linen shirt, but he moves with the innate authority of a king. His wound has long since healed, leaving behind a puckered silver scar on his side, a permanent reminder of how they began. "I was just thinking," she says, "how quiet my life used to be." "And now?" he asks. She smiles. "Now there is Pip trying to learn how to howl at 3 in the morning. There is Elda, the healer, telling me I use too much salt in my stew. There is the Council of Elders arguing about patrol routes. It's chaos." "And you hate it," he teases, his lips brushing her temple. "I love it," she says, her voice soft. "It's the most beautiful noise in the world." She was accepted here, not without hesitation. The arrival of a human mate for their alpha was a shock, but Kaylin's word was law, and her own actions spoke louder than any decree. She had not come as a queen demanding fealty. She had come as a Lara. She helped Elda in the healing lodge, her grandfather's lessons finding new purpose. She listened to the stories of the elders. She played with the children, who were drawn to her quiet calm. They saw what Kaylin saw. Not a fragile human, but a woman with a core of steel and a heart as wide as the valley. They saw the woman who had faced down a bear for their alpha. They saw the compassion that had saved him. They called her Encreov, the heartwood, the center that holds the tree steady. A familiar, insistent tug on her trousers breaks her reverie. She looks down. Pip, no longer a tiny cub but a lanky, adolescent wolf with paws still too big for his body, looks up at her with Kaylin's golden eyes. He holds a slobbery, half-chewed piece of wood in his mouth, his tail thumping a frantic rhythm against the balcony floor. He wants to play. "Not now, you little menace," Kaylin says, but his voice is fond. Alara laughs and crouches down, scratching the young wolf behind his ears. "We'll play later, I promise." Pip seems to accept this, dropping the wood and flopping down at her feet with a dramatic sigh. "We have to go," Kaylin says quietly. "It is time." Alara's good mood falters slightly. The trip to the supply town, the nearest outpost of her old world. They only go when absolutely necessary, for things they cannot grow or make themselves. Coffee, sugar, certain metal tools. She always feels a sense of unease when they go, a feeling of being an imposter in a world she no longer belongs to. "I know," she says, straightening up. She squares her shoulders. She is not that fearful woman anymore. They walk hand in hand through the den, Pip trotting at their heels. They receive nods of respect, warm smiles. Here, she is not an outcast. She is not broken. She is the alpha's mate. She belongs. The town is as jarring as always. The smell of gasoline and fried food. The noise of cars and unfamiliar voices. The hard, flat pavement beneath her boots. They move through the small general store gathering their supplies. People give Kaylin a wide berth. He does not hide what he is, not entirely. His sheer presence, his height, the predatory grace in his walk, the unnerving intensity of his golden eyes, it all screams that he is not to be trifled with. They are seen as outsiders, people from the deep woods. It suits them fine. As they are leaving the store, their arms laden with canvas bags, she sees him. Marcus. He is standing across the street talking to another man. He looks diminished, smaller. His expensive suit is rumpled, his face is pale and doughy. The confident swagger is gone, replaced by a kind of weary resignation. He laughs at something the other man says, but the sound is hollow, empty. Her heart doesn't pound, her breath doesn't catch. She feels nothing. A faint, distant curiosity, like watching a character in a movie she saw long ago. Then he turns. His eyes scan the street and land on her. Recognition dawns. Shock. His mouth falls slightly open. His gaze darts from her to the towering, powerful man standing beside her, his hand holding hers in a grip of casual possession. He sees Pip sitting patiently at her feet. He sees the serene, quiet happiness on her face. He sees the way Kaylin looks at her, a look of fierce, unwavering adoration. He sees everything he threw away, everything he failed to understand. Kaylin feels her stiffen and follows her gaze. A low growl begins in his chest, an almost inaudible vibration. She squeezes his hand. "It's all right," she murmurs, for his ears only. Marcus takes a half step forward, as if to cross the street, to say something, to demand an explanation, to try and reclaim what he lost. but the words die on his lips. What could he possibly say? He looks at Kaelin's predatory stare, at Alara's unbreakable calm. He looks at the life she has built in the ruins of the one he destroyed. He is a ghost from another life. And he has no power here. He flinches, turns away, and says a hasty goodbye to his companion, practically fleeing down the street. Defeated. Alara watches him go. She feels no triumph, no anger, just a quiet, profound pity. He is still trapped in his cold, practical world, chasing legacies and appearances, while she has found a truth he will never know. She turns her back on him, on the town, on the past, and takes Kaelin's hand. "Let's go home," she says. Back on their balcony, as the sun sets and paints the valley in hues of orange and deep violet, she leans against him, watching the lights begin to glow in the homes below. She thinks of the word that used to define her: barren. A desolate, empty landscape. A wasteland. He had been so wrong. Her heart had not been barren. It had been fallow. Waiting for the right seeds to be planted. The seeds of kindness, of acceptance, of a wild and impossible love. She was told her greatest weakness was the empty space inside her, the thing she could not create. But that emptiness had made room for a wounded wolf, for a lost cub, for a king who had lost his kingdom. Her compassion, born from her deepest pain, had not been a flaw. It had been a key. The key that unlocked his heart, her own destiny, and this entire, beautiful world. She places a hand on her stomach, a gesture that is no longer one of sadness, but of contentment. She is the heartwood. She is the anchor. She is the queen of a wild and wonderful place. She is not barren. She is home.